Have you ever thought about what it would be like to have to write a letter of introduction for yourself to your own mother? It's probably the hardest thing I've ever done, and I failed at it. I didn't manage to convince her to love me or even to pick up the phone and call me. I don't actually think I was trying to get her to love me, to be fair. I just wanted to speak to her or to anyone that I was related to for the very first time. At the same time that I failed at getting her to talk to me, I did manage to contact my biological father. Or actually, I should say, he contacted me. I never got a chance to write to him because I was still waiting to hear back from my mother when I heard from him. But let's talk a little bit today about what I did and what's suggested by other people as methods of first contact, in case you're listening to this and you're an adoptee who thinks that you've found your biological parents, or if you're a blood relative who thinks that you've found a lost adoptee. So, first, my mother. I wanted to try to contact my mother first because I was under the impression that most biological mothers want to talk to their children. I was interested in talking to my biological father, but I wanted to give my mother first chance to tell me if there was some horrible reason behind her giving me away. Many adoptees are the results of sexual assaults or pregnancies that happened to someone who was still a child themselves, or pregnancies that a woman was forced to go all the way through with. All sorts of stories like that happen. So I wanted to give her a chance to talk. Nothing like that, for the record, is why I exist, I think. I most likely exist because of a bunch of beer and a strip poker game around Halloween in 1966, but that's kind of beside the point. When my search angel and I found my mother, to my surprise, she'd spent about a dozen years living near me in San Francisco. And even now, she lives about 10 minutes away from me in Oregon. I still don't know what that's about. It could be a coincidence, although it's a very odd one, isn't it? On the advice of my search angel, I wrote a short letter explaining that I'd been looking for her and giving her a short description of things that I've accomplished over the course of my life. Looking back on it now, I was hoping that I could prove to her that I was worthwhile and worth knowing. I also desperately needed medical records for the family because I was in the midst of deciding how invasive of a surgery to have to remove tumors that they were concerned might be a genetically passed down cancer. At any rate, I tried to reassure my mother that I turned out okay and that I didn't need much from her. I also wanted to let her know that I'd like to meet her. For some reason, regular non-adopted people always seem to immediately jump to the conclusion that we're showing up to ask for money, so I wanted to make sure that she wasn't laboring under that impression. Actually, in my experience from watching my adoptive brother's reunion, it was the biological family that hits the adoptee up for money. That's just something to be aware of. If you're an adoptee, you don't owe your biological family a thing, and you really don't owe them any money, so don't fall into that. That's just a little aside there. I sent my mother a letter via certified mail, which was suggested by my search angel. I talk a little bit more about search angels in the Home to Roost video. By sending it certified, I would know for sure that the letter got directly to her. I sent it both certified and registered. There's a little postcard that the person that the mail is addressed to has to sign for, and that postcard is returned to the person who originally sent the mail. That way you know for sure it was delivered directly into the hands of the person that you want to get that mail. Otherwise, biological mothers who have not worked through their issues sometimes just never answer that first letter from their own child. And then the child is left wondering if the letter really got to their mother or not. Sometimes spouses get to the letter first and throw it away, or assume it was misdelivered, or any number of things that can happen. And all of that can leave you wondering if the address you had was the right one. So if you're going to send a letter, send it return receipt requested and certified. So about a week after I sent my initial letter to her, I got my little certified mail postcard back. And that way I knew that she'd gotten it. It had her signature on it. It meant a lot to me to see her signature. It was the first time I'd ever seen her handwriting. And then I waited and I waited and I waited, and she didn't write me back and she didn't call me. I checked every day at the post office box I'd given her. By the way, don't give your home address to the person that you're contacting to begin with. You are, after all, contacting a stranger that you don't know anything about yet. Finally, after I'd had emergency surgery, and I had to have the most invasive version of it because she didn't respond, I sent her a follow-up postcard with my contact info on it again. I wanted to make sure that she'd gotten the information for certain, and I wanted to also send the message that I wasn't going to just go away. At the same time that all of this was happening, here's what was going on with my biological father. When I did my DNA, neither of my parents, my actual biological parents, had done theirs, but their other relatives had. I figured out who my father was by talking to the son of one of his cousins, who I met on 23andMe, and I gave him my contact information. I asked him if he knew of anybody who would have been roughly the age that I knew my father might, or suspected my father might be anyway, from my non-identifying information, and who had been in the right area where I was born. And he said that he'd get back to me after he asked a few people, and then he never got back to me. So that told me that he was avoiding me, and that word was out, and somebody on that side was telling him not to talk to me. So I took screenshots of all of his genealogical information that I could find, and our DNA connectivity, everything. Always take screenshots as you go along. People frequently disappear when the adoptee monster shows up. Because I hadn't heard from my mother, I decided that I didn't want to get rejected again, and so I didn't contact the person I found who I thought might be my father. I was just going to go about my life and try to put all of it behind me. And then my father contacted me. He'd been talking to the cousin, and he didn't believe I was his daughter, but he got too curious to let it just sit out there like that. And so he, I believe, researched me and had me investigated, unbeknownst to me, and then he called me. Then a few months went by with my father and I texting each other and making friends and sharing information, and he still didn't quite believe, or maybe didn't want to believe, that I was his child. So he asked if I would take a paternity test. I agreed to it, and we took the test, and it came back 99.9999% positive that he was my father, right on Valentine's Day. So that was all going along really well. And then I finally got a letter from my mother. Unfortunately for me, she said she wanted no contact, and she followed that by saying that it was all so long ago and that she'd gotten over it. I guess the implication is that I should also be over it, and by it, I guess she meant me. I suppose for her, it had become a single incident from her past. It was just that summer that she got pregnant and then she gave her baby away. For me, though, it's not a single event. It's my entire life. It's the single biggest thing that's affected my entire life. And it's something that I think about every single day, in some way or another, big or small. Everything from having to write in unknown on every medical form that asks for any kind of family medical history, to watching or reading some story or movie or TV show that has an orphaned character, to hearing adoption jokes, to walking by someone who looks like me and wondering for a split second if we're related. Anyway, some people find their biologicals online first, on Facebook or other social media sites, and send a contact letter by email. You can try that, but if that person doesn't follow you already, you may be out of luck. The message might get into there's a few different mailboxes that people don't always know to check on Facebook, so messages frequently go astray that way. And the same goes for email. You might end up in their junk mail folder. You just really don't know. I really strongly feel like the certified letter is the best route, no matter what. And giving them contact information for you that doesn't go to your house, but to a post office box is also best. You just don't know what you're going to find on the other side. There's a bunch of templates online for writing the first letter to your biological parents. I'll link to some good ones in the video description in case you're stumped and in need of some good ideas. You could also include a photo of you as a baby and another one of you as an adult. I didn't do that and I regret it, although I doubt it would have changed my mother's mind about me. Keep the letter short, no more than 2 pages. It's suggested not to call them because anybody in the household could answer the phone, and your biological parent may not have told anyone in the current family about you. Remember, your mother went through trauma too, and your bio father may not have any idea that you exist. It's better not to do a dramatic reveal, and try not to do it during a holiday. Keep in mind that they'll be more likely to talk to you if you're gentle with them. Don't thank her for giving you a better life, because you don't know if your life would have been just fine if you stayed with her, and it might make her feel like you don't think she would have been as good a parent as your adoptive ones. Try not to dump your own trauma on her either, at least not in that first letter. You don't want to scare her. My experience personally is that people see adoptees as scary anyway, so don't give them any confirmation. Do tell her about your family and your children if you have them, and tell her about your hobbies and what your job is. You might want to give her a little bit of information, but not too much. It's tricky. And like I said, I must have screwed mine up. So I'll link to templates that maybe would have done a better job than what I did. If you're writing to another extended family member, I'd also advise keeping the first contact short. Maybe saying that you seem to be related through DNA. Do they know if that might be possible? Just say you're curious about whether or not you have any blood connections. The DNA Geeks template is a good one for those, and that link is in my video description. I have regrets about the letter I sent to my mother. I thought I was going to reassure her that I turned out okay. And like I said, I was sure she would want to talk to me at least once. I didn't think she would choose to just not answer me at all, which is what she seemed to be doing after my certified letter. It's cruel to leave your own child permanently in limbo. I try to be grateful now that I got one letter from her, even if it was basically to tell me to never speak to her again. At least now I sort of have closure, although it breaks my heart, and it's something I think about daily. I try not to take it personally, because after all, she doesn't know me, but it's painful. And it's not something that I think non-adoptees are really able to empathize with. There's an actual term for finding your biological parents and having them once again decide that they don't want to speak to you, and it's called secondary rejection. So that's something that you'll hear adoptees talk about a lot. They'll say that they're in reunion with one parent and in secondary rejection with another, or that they're in secondary rejection with both of them. It means that they found them, they reached out to them, and they were rejected once again. Because this is a thing that is that happens sometimes. I want to make sure that my fellow adoptees that might be listening to this, who are thinking of contacting their parents, I want you to be careful and be as prepared as you can be. Lots of us go into this with sort of magical thinking that, it's going to be a fairy tale, or at least that it's going to be pleasant. And there really almost never is a good story, a happy story behind why a woman would give up her own baby. So make sure that you have a support system of friends and family who know that you're doing this. Be aware that it may not turn out the way that you hope. You may want to have a therapist ready who knows you before you even start this journey. And I suggest finding a therapist, if possible, who is also an adoptee. I am including a link below to a list of therapists who are adoptees. You may also want to think about joining a local chapter of Adoptees Connect, or watch the videos from Adoption Mosaic, particularly the one on secondary rejection. My hope is that everything turns out for the best for you, and that your mother and your father want to have contact with you, and that they want to invite you to be members of the family. It will be hard, no matter which way it turns out. But you're not the only person in the world who's searching. And I want you to know that you have the invisible support of the rest of us adoptees out there.